Good morning, welcome to Simple Hobby Homesteading. I am going to show you, if you have 5 minutes in the morning, how you can get a supper started so that when you get home in the evening, it is already done with just 5 minutes of prep work in the morning. All you need is an onion, a whole chicken, and the seasoning that I have here, and I'll explain to you how you can mix that up in a moment. So first thing you're going to do is simply get a crock pot, put your crock pot on low. There we go. And you are just going to cut up, slice up an onion. And I'm not talking about, you don't need any special goggles or anything. This isn't going to make you super teary-eyed because you're just going to cut it up into rings, and they don't even have to be perfect rings. To cut up an onion, I always like to just slice off the ends, and then you can just take that outer layer right off. Now you're going to hear in a lot of my videos that I say, and then just throw it in the chicken bowl to give to the chickens later on. Onions are one of the few things that chickens cannot have. Chickens, dogs, cats, they cannot eat onions in large amounts or even in these kinds of amounts because you don't know if one chicken is going to grab the whole onion or whether, so you don't want to risk it. And not the whole onion, but the whole onion peel. So what you're going to do is just simply peel that outer layer off the onion, and we're going to slice this bad boy into rings. And it's really easy just to slice into rings. And like I said, they don't have to be super thin. They don't have to be uniform, really. We're just looking at getting that onion in the crock pot. So get those rings done, and then we're just going to sprinkle them on the bottom of the crock pot. There we go, just like that. Just sprinkling all of those in the bottom of the crock pot. There we go. Okay, that step is done. Now, one thing I like to do is put the seasoning in a bowl before I handle the chicken, so I'm not getting my jar of seasoning all chickeny. And the seasoning that we have the recipe for makes 2 tablespoons total of seasoning. If you have a big chicken like I do, mine's 7 pounds, I like to double that. And it kind of depends on how strong a flavor you like your chicken to. 2 tablespoons is good for about a 4-pound chicken, right around in there. But like I said, I like to double it. So the recipe I'm giving you is for a 2 tablespoons, about a 4-pound chicken. You can double that. I make a huge batch of seasoning and put it in this jar just so I can use it whenever I need to. But the basic recipe is 2 teaspoons of paprika, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of thyme, a half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. You can put a little bit more in if you like it a little spicier, and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. So I've got all that here doubled, because like I said, I like to do double. Now, you take your whole chicken, and I've got a rather big crock pot here, and so I can fit a nice big chicken in. If you've got a smaller crock pot, you can get a smaller chicken. This one is 7 pounds. One really great thing is taking your chicken and putting it either on a bag, or I just use this cookie sheet here, and it catches a lot of that juice when you open up the bag, so that way you're not making a complete mess. Take a sharp knife, and you're going to open this bag. Now with a whole chicken, you're often going to have the gizzard and the organs and even sometimes the neck in the cavity of this chicken, and like this one there is, and it's usually in a bag. So I'm simply going to take that out, and I save that for my dogs. I give that to my dogs. We're going to search for a neck, and it must have been in that bag because it's not in the cavity of the chicken. Take the chicken by the legs. If you open it up on the other side, then just grab whatever you can. And we're going to put the chicken in the crock pot on top of that bed of onions. So we take this chicken. He's like, I didn't want to come out. Let him drip for just a second. And we're going to put him in that crock pot just like that. I usually put it breast side up to start because we're going to put some seasoning in there. So get rid of this mess over to the side. So you take your chicken here, we've got that on the bed of onions on the bottom. And what I like to do is get the seasoning up and under the skin of the chicken. And this part kind of grosses some people out, but go ahead and go through it and do it, and it's kind of interesting. Kids kind of like to do this, so if you want to get your kids involved in this, it's kind of cool. But under the skin, especially on the breast part, there is like a connective tissue between the 2 sides of the breast. So take your hand in there and just kind of work your hand and get rid of that connective, because we want to try to get this seasoning all the way under that skin and along on the meat. So this is why we put our seasoning in a bowl, because we don't want to be reaching into our jar of seasoning. So I take some seasonings and I just put it down that cavity underneath, and I rub it a little bit. I can rub it on the outside of the skin a little bit, and I'm going to rub it on the inside against that meat. And that skin is going to trap that flavor really nicely. And if you want to take some of those onion rings and stick those up under the skin, you can do that as well. It's not necessary because we do have onion powder in our seasoning mix. So like I said, we want to work that all down in there. Get your hand down as far as you can. Kids love to do that. And then I'm going to flip this guy over, and I'm going to put some more seasoning on the other side, just like that. We're going to rub him down, pat him down. I don't need to add any oil to this. I don't need to add any moisture at all. When you look at this, you're going to see that there's hardly any liquid. And as this chicken cooks down, it will release that liquid and it will cook in that liquid, and you'll have almost a full crock pot of liquid by the end of the day, which is fine. It's just cooking in that liquid. So we are simply going to leave. That's it. That's all you have to do. It takes the most time is getting that stupid chicken out of the plastic wrapper. That's what takes most of your time. So we are done. We stick the lid on it. I'm going to wait until I've washed my hands. You stick the lid on it and you leave it for all day. I like to leave it for about 8 hours on low in the crock pot. And by the time you come back from work or come back at the end of the day when it's supper time, you've made some steamed broccoli or some corn or some other kind of veggie, and you've made a nice potato or some rice or some kind of starch. I'm a bread and starch person. Some bread, you can get some breads and just put them in the oven. You can get some really good rolls now in the freezer section of stores. And so you've got a full meal, and the main part of it, the meat part of it, the chicken, took 5 minutes to prepare, and it is the best chicken. And then I'm also going to show you how we can continue use of that, the carcass of the chicken, and make the best ever broth. So we're gonna wait 8 hours and come on back, and you're gonna join me for supper tonight. Thanks, we'll see you in a little bit. Hey, minor reminder here, do not forget to plug in your crock pot. There's been way too many times that I've put that sucker on low, walked away, came back 8 hours later, wasn't plugged in. Just thought I'd let you know. Quick tip number 2, if you have less time, less than 8 hours to cook that chicken, throw that crock pot on high and it'll cook in 4 to 5 hours instead of 8. Now, as you can see, I've already gotten most of the meat out. The boys were hungry tonight, so they didn't give me a whole lot of chance to show as I was taking the meat out. But we still have like the legs, so we can get the most of the meat out. And use a tongs, because this is hot, hot, hot. So get most of the meat out. And if you take out bones, go ahead and put those bones back in. I'll tell you why about that in a minute. So we're just reaching in and getting all this good meat out.
Putting the bones back in.
And the chicken that I pull off of here, I love to save and either use for dinners later or lunches, or save it for chicken noodle soup. And now it's time to make the chicken broth. We took all of the meat out of the chicken that we could get out, and we're going to start adding some vegetables to let this simmer overnight on low to get the chicken broth tomorrow. So the first thing we're going to add is carrots. I like to add 4 big carrots, and I scrub, as with all root vegetables, I scrub with one of these scrubby brushes because we want to leave the outside skin on this carrot. There's a lot of vitamins and minerals on the skin of most fruits and vegetables, and if they're edible, we want to use them. So we keep the skin on the carrots without peeling them, and we just wash them really well with a scrubby brush, and then we're just going to stick those right in there with all of the chicken fixins. And we also add some bay leaves. I like to add 2 bay leaves. Now, did you know that you can grow your own bay tree inside if you have a nice bright window? They do well in pots, and so I like to add 2 dried bay leaves. These are from our own bay trees. And I like to use 4 stalks of celery. Make sure you wash that celery really good. It tends to be quite dirty. So we just roughly chop that up. This recipe is really good if you have a kid that is learning how to chop fruits and vegetables when they're cooking. Have them help you do this and have them do all your chopping, because it's just rough chopping and it's really easy to do. Alrighty, and then we're gonna add some fresh parsley, and if you don't have fresh, you can use dried parsley just as well, and that's just flat leaf Italian parsley. And I like to add a little bit of extra garlic. This is 2 garlic cloves, so let's add in that parsley and the garlic cloves. If you want, you can just keep them whole, just go ahead and peel them, cut the ends off, and then peel them, or you can grab your handy garlic press, put that in there, and press that garlic directly in. There we go. Some extra garlic is always good. And I especially like to use garlic in the fall and in the winter when we've got cold and flu season coming. So we just put that in there, press that down, and garlic, voila. And that comes out super easy, just like that. There we go. And then we can give that to the chickens. Garlic is a natural dewormer for chickens, so I love giving it to my chickens. All right, and the last thing we're gonna do before we let this sit all night is we're just gonna add some water. What we're doing is we're making this chicken broth, and we're gonna strain out all of this stuff tomorrow, but we want to get a good broth, so we're just gonna add water to fill it up to the top of the crock pot. Getting all that yummy stuff in there. No need to add salt, pepper, or extra seasonings because it's already in there from the seasoning we add to the chicken. But just fill it up to the top, and we are gonna, let's get all that garlic in there. Yeah, all that garlic needs to get in there. Yum, yum, yum. And we're gonna put that on low and let that sit all night long so that when we come down in the morning, not only is our kitchen gonna smell amazing, but we're gonna have homemade chicken stock that is ready to either be used right away tomorrow, or we can freeze that for future use. And I usually do both. So we'll see you in the morning. Good morning, everybody. Look at this. We have let our chicken carcass, I know that's a horrible word to use, but chicken carcass, our veggies, and the extra water that we put in there, we've let that sit all night on low in our crock pot, and we have a beautiful broth this morning that we just need to strain out and store. So let's get started. Now all we need is a strainer, something to strain it into a bowl or something, and a ladle or a spoon or something to get that broth out. And we're simply going to, and I keep my bowl as close to the crock pot as I can so that I'm not dripping a ton. And all we do is simply ladle everything into here, and that strainer grabs all the veggies and the bones and things like that from the crock pot and lets that broth go straight through. Now we have more broth than what this bowl will hold, and so when it gets full, I'll just take it and pour it either into Ziploc bags. I like to store mine in gallon Ziploc bags. I store about 4 cups of broth in each gallon Ziploc bag. Or you can store it, you can can it in jars, or you can freeze, and I freeze those Ziploc bags, or you can freeze it in jars, whatever you, or plastic containers, whatever you want to store your broth in. But you can go ahead and you can just get, and I'm just getting mostly the broth right now. I'll get more of the veggies and things like that when I get it a little bit lower. But for this first little thing here, I'm just going to get most of this broth. Now when you have this strainer, when it's full of all the veggies and the chicken, I like to push it down a bit and get all of that broth out that I can. And if it gets too full, then you are just going to need to dump some of that broth out, so that way it doesn't just keep soaking it up when you push it through. So we're gonna pour it over here. If you are using Ziploc bags like I do to store this and freeze it, then you want to wait till this broth cools down. I'm just going to keep pushing down. You want to wait until this broth cools down before you put it in those Ziploc bags. Otherwise, you're going to have a Ziploc bag that melts and a huge chicken broth mess. So you can see I just move them a little bit, move it around a little bit. And these veggies are so good for the chickens. I give them to the chickens, but I do put it all on a plate or in a big bowl, and I'm gonna sort through and take out all the bones. I don't want the chickens to get any bones because they will choke on those and they will have issues with bones. And some people will say, well, the chickens will eat around the bones, they won't eat the bones. Well, sometimes our cats get into the hen house and they like to eat some of the scraps that I give the chickens, and sometimes even the dogs will come into the hen house if there's something that smells really good, and they will eat what I've given to the chickens. And so I definitely don't want to give the dogs and the cats any cooked bones. Now people will be like, Jenna, you give your dogs chicken and meat all the time. That's raw meat. Dogs and cats can consume and do consume really well raw bones. They eat those, chew those, and digest those and get a lot of nutrients from them. And they have a very, very strong chance of those cooked bones splintering in their stomach or in their intestinal lining and perforating either their stomach or their intestines. So don't ever, ever, ever give your animal any cooked bones. And that includes smoked, any kind of cooked bones. They get splintery. So there we go. Once we have all that broth, I'm going to sift through all these extra veggies and things, and I am going to give the veggies and the meat that doesn't have any bones in it, I'm going to give that to the chickens. And so we waste practically nothing. And this broth, I'm going to save some of it out to make some jambalaya, and we'll show you a video of that either, I don't know, either tonight when I make it or at a later date. And I'm also going to keep some of this broth out to make some homemade chicken noodle soup. Super easy homemade chicken noodle soup. And nothing beats this homemade chicken broth. It is simply amazing. You can see that nice, dark, rich coloring. Now the reason that this one batch is a little bit darker than the other is this one is one that we push those veggies down and strain those veggies, and it caused it to be a little bit lighter. The carrots and kind of mushing those carrots down caused it to be a little bit lighter, but they have the exact same nutritional benefits. One's just a little bit darker than the other. This was the first batch that we skimmed off. And oh, there's my cup that I can't wait to finish. And I am going to sort through with my hands, just sort through and get all those bones out. And the chickens are going to be so happy with that bunch of food. It's definitely morning. You guys are getting me bright and early, but oh, I can't wait to have some chicken broth. So you guys have a great day, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye. So good.
Just picking all the bones out so I can give this to my chickens. This shows true love to your chickens. They only, well, they kind of give me eggs. And entertainment. I like to watch them.
And I really do like to use a stainless steel pot like this for my chicken bowl because I can just put a lid on it, especially during the spring, summer, and fall, so no little bugs or gnats get in there. And it's really easy to clean. So have a great day.